Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with some more updates coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got big news coming from the Kursk region of Russia. We're going to talk some more about the Glushkovsky district today. This is an area of approximately 700 square kilometers that Ukraine has been actively trying to take over for the last maybe 2 weeks. And we've reported many of the bridges being blown in this area. I'll also have a map to show you in case you're not familiar of where the Glushkovsky district is. But I reported to you guys yesterday that Ukraine had opened up a second front in the Kursk offensive. So this is in an attempt to try to split the Glushkovsky district in two. That's what Ukraine is trying to do right now. And fight for control is currently underway, okay? So we'll talk more about this today. I'll show you some new maps that show exactly what Ukraine is attempting to do here to try to make it easier to take control of this district. So what you're seeing on your screen is another major prisoner exchange today taking place between Ukraine and Russia. This appears to be 103 Russians for 103 Ukrainians and a major prisoner swap. And this apparently was mediated by the UAE. So definitely big news in regards to Ukraine today. They got a lot of their soldiers back, and I heard that many of these soldiers that were returned to Ukraine have been in Russian captivity for up to 2 years now, okay? So basically since almost the beginning of this war was when they were captured, and we'll discuss that as well, okay? So also some things happening in Ukraine. Ukraine coming under attack by Russian Shahed drones again. Something like 76 drones were fired at Ukraine just yesterday. So I don't have any reports of any damage or anything like that, but I'm assuming that Ukraine was able to take down most of these. And if there was any hits inside of Ukraine, it doesn't appear to be anything majorly significant at this time. So let's go ahead and hop into the news and let me start sharing some of this information with you. Let's start with this post on X from militaryland.net. Another prisoner exchange took place today. 103 Ukrainians returned home. Among them are soldiers from the National Guard, so there's 38 of them. Armed Forces 28, Kraken 2, International Legion 2, SSO 3, TRO 1, Border Guards 8, Police 4, Sailors 21, DSST 3, and SES 1. Okay, so from what we understand, 103 Ukrainian soldiers were returned back to Ukraine. So we can see some of the photos here of these soldiers that are returning. They seem to be very happy, and as you can see again, they look to be very skinny and malnourished as we see this continuously. Many of the soldiers that come back from Russian captivity appear to be very, very skinny and don't look like they ate much while they were held in these prisons in Russia. So definitely a big day for Ukraine, considering that they got a lot of their soldiers back. And then also for Russia, they got 103 of their soldiers back as well. So I'm sure some of them are happy to return back to their families as well in their home nations. So also, I want to show you guys this video. It's pretty inspiring, okay? From Vicegrad24, Ukrainian soldiers who were held in Russian captivity for 2 years find out that the Ukrainian army has now entered the Kursk region of Russia and that the Ukrainian Air Force has received F-16 jets from the West. More than 100 soldiers exchanged today. So these soldiers had no idea that the Kursk offensive had been launched and that also F-16 fighter jets are now inside of Ukraine. So take a look at their response when they find out that the Kursk offensive has begun. So take a look.
Знаєте, що Україна?
Що?
Курську область,
Не
знаєте?
знаємо.
Ми захопили частину Курської області. Серйозно. Україна в місто, Суджа, да, ми там навіть були, тобто ми захопили частину території Росії.
То ж наше,
Так, війна зараз проходить в тому числі на території Росії.
коли Хрущов віддавав Крим Україні,
Так,
він
так.
от гриз шматки України.
Угу.
То Україна.
Так, все так і є. Ще з такого хорошого, в нас літаки F-16, якщо знаєте, нам їх передали, ми вже літаємо на них. Ще, не знаю, про Курщину знаю.
All right, so as you can see, he appears to be very happy. So does this man over here once they hear that the Kursk offensive was opened up into Russia. I'm sure they weren't expecting that, considering that Russia invaded Ukraine. You wouldn't think that Ukraine would have the ability to do so. And I think most of us were caught off guard when the Kursk offensive took place. That's why when this first was launched back in early August, There was so many people looking for this information, trying to figure out what was going to happen here, and was Ukraine going to be successful? So far, they appear to be. They've been there for over a month now, and they're digging in. They have taken a little bit of losses. We reported that just the other day. But for the most part, Ukraine is having major success in the Kursk region of Russia. So let's move on to our next update now. So now we're going to talk more about the Kursk region here, okay? NOAA reports, Kursk and border operations day number 40. Ukraine pulled up more equipment into the Glushkovky district in Kursk following the border breakthrough near Novi Put. An overview of all events happen in Kursk and other border regions combined in this thread. Okay, so he's got a couple photos here for us. I'm not really sure what this photo is supposed to be showing, but we do see like some blown up cars here and some smoke. I'm not sure if this was from some sort of attack that happened in the Kursk region, but he does have a few pictures here that show Ukrainian armor pushing into the Kursk region of Russia. We can see that triangle there on the front of that vehicle is probably some sort of armored vehicle. Same with that as well. And this appears to be some sort of armored vehicle or van, and then also some sort of logistics truck. So Ukraine, and what they're doing right now is they're transporting lots of their heavy equipment, lots of tanks, logistics trucks, armored vehicles, troops, and everything is pouring into this new offensive that's opened up inside of the Kursk region. And they're setting up operations to potentially open up another front here and put more pressure on the Glushkovky district and ultimately try to take it over. That's obviously what Ukraine is trying to do here. So let's move to our next update now. From War Translated Dmitry, Russian channels report a worsening for them situation in the Glushkovo district, where the Ukrainian armed forces have launched a new incursion across the border. The Ukrainian armed forces, according to them, are consolidating their positions in the district, Kursk region, Glushkovky section of the border. Battles are underway in Vesyoloy, The enemy is consolidating its positions. The Ukrainian armed forces are dragging their equipment to the settlement of Novi Put, dismounting troops and retreating back. Information is being clarified. Our contacts assess the situation as serious. Okay, so what it looks like to me, based on the second front that is opened up just right here, okay, this is the main portion of the offensive where it began. And then Ukraine just recently opened this second front over here, okay? We've been hearing of lots of fighting near Tyatkino, but this is the major offensive that's just starting to open here. And Novi Put is right on the border of Ukraine. It's the closest settlement to the Ukrainian border. And what we're hearing, according to this information from Dmitry, is that Ukraine is going over the border with their equipment, dropping it off in Novi Put, and then heading back. So they're probably going back to other cities nearby to bring more equipment over the border, as eventually what we will see is this blue section all right here is going to expand over here in this area. And this is the Glushkovky district, this whole area that I'm circling here that Ukraine is attempting to take over right now, okay? So that's big news. If Ukraine is rolling in all this equipment, that means they have gained a pretty good foothold in this area to hold the Russians back while their secondary troops in the background bring up heavy armor and tanks, so that way they can expand their operations in this area. Okay, so also from PS01, the Russians have just confirmed they have a problem in Kursk. Their counterattack got stuck, but Ukrainians are advancing in the rear, basically threatening to pocket them. Ukraine is dividing the large pocket formed against the same river in two parts. It will be easier to capture the 1,000 Russian conscripts. Okay, so this is what I mean. Ukraine is trying to divide the Glushkovky district in two, and this map will show us that here in just a moment. Let's read this real quick, though. The situation in Glushkovky district remains tense. Heavy fighting is underway. The enemy continues to advance and try to consolidate. Border guards, together with units of the Russian Ministry of Defense, are fighting, not allowing the enemy to break through further. The Ukrainian armed forces are introducing new forces into the battle, bringing in tanks, armored fighting vehicles, and infantry. Artillery and aviation are working on both sides. So I'm assuming they're talking about their own artillery and aviation. So their fighter bombers are probably trying to hold back the Ukrainians on literally both sides, as there's some soldiers, Russian soldiers that is, that are literally trapped. They're being shot at, from behind them and also in front of them. And there's about 1,000 Russian soldiers that could be cut off at some point if Ukraine is able to complete this splitting of the Glushkovky district. So I'll show you on a map here, so that way you know what I mean. But this is the original transcript in Russian if you want to screenshot that. And also, So let's take a look at this map now so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so this right here, from this red line, basically where the Russians are currently fighting at, pushing the Ukrainians west or east this way, right? This whole section here under this blue line, which is the same river, right? That runs all the way up to Rilsk. Okay, so the Ukrainians are trying to take over this whole district here. It's approximately 700 square miles in this area, and Ukraine pushed in right at the bottom of this red arrow. Okay, so what they're trying to do is push all the way to Glushkovo, effectively splitting this district in two. So this would be one district, and this would be another. And the Ukrainians are fighting over here against a line of Russians in this area, leading all the way up to the same river. And if Ukraine pushes upwards here, they'll now surround all these soldiers that are fighting in this area here. So what they're trying to do is take it, instead of just kind of fight this whole section as one, they're splitting it in two to make it easier to take over, essentially, is what they're doing. So they're going to surround all these soldiers, these Russian soldiers that are in this area. The only thing that they can really do is if they've got these pontoon bridges that are constructed on the same river, they can try to get back out. But if they don't have these pontoon bridges, the only way they can really escape is back towards Kornevo over here, as they do have some access to a small amount of land corridor to get back to Kornevo. So that's what Ukraine is trying to do, to split this district and make it easier for them to take over, okay? So that's what we're seeing happening here in the Glushkovki district. Okay, so also we've got this video footage from Tendar. The second Ukrainian incursion into the Russian Kursk region is supported by mechanized troops. According to the Korn Group, 2 battalions are engaged. The mood in Russian channels have changed, and when seeing this, then it is not hard to guess why. Okay, so we can see from this video footage, Ukrainian heavy armor rolling into this second offensive that is being opened. We can see multiple vehicles here. Looks like maybe some armored vehicles, maybe even tanks, but we're hearing of lots of different equipment rolling in over here, okay, and multiple battalions, okay? So we're talking thousands of troops potentially that could be pushing into this area, and it's now a second front that Ukraine has opened up. So let's see what happens here if they're going to be successful opening up this new front, and then also potentially splitting the Glushkovki district in half. And I wouldn't be surprised in the next month or so that we hear that Ukraine has control of at least half of the Glushkovki district if they are successful on surrounding those approximately 1,000 Russian troops that we were showing you on that last map. So also from War Translated Dmitry, Russians confirm the opening of another pocket in the Glushkovo district of Kursk Oblast, much closer to Glushkovo, although the front line is not stable here as they claim. Okay, so this is more information coming from that second offensive that has been opened up and where Ukraine is trying to split the Glushkovki district. So this is more information also from Russia. It says Kursk direction at 10 o'clock at September 14th, 2024, updating the situation. Counterattack by the Ukrainian armed forces. Unfortunately, this morning the information was confirmed. I specifically asked the guys on the ground for the latest information that the enemy's attempt to break through south of Glushkovo is developing. At present, the Ukrainian armed forces have under their control the village of Veseloy, still unstable, but they are already there. Their bridgehead is approximately the same as on the map. I repeat, this is not a zone of their stable control, but places where they are present, at least in form of flying squads. Our reserves have been urgently deployed to the site. A counter battle is underway. I continue to closely monitor the situation, keep our fingers crossed, and pray for the guys. P.S. I think it is already clear that there will be no further offensive from our side today. Okay, so as of today, September 14th, 2024, we're not expecting Russia to be on the offensive. They're going to be on the defensive here as this second front is opening up, and it looks like Ukraine is pushing further and further into this area. So we've got this report that shows the original transcript that probably came off Telegram here, and then also this map, okay? So this was something interesting that I noticed here too, is that, so this is Glushkovo over here. We know that Ukraine pushed into this area. I think this is Veseloy, this town that the Russian soldier was talking about, and it doesn't appear to be under like stable control, but there is reports of Ukrainian soldiers in that town. And then also what they want to do is push up to Glishkovo, potentially taking it over. This is where they will split the Glishkovki district in half, okay? And then this is again where the Russian soldiers are operating over here. And as we can see, Ukraine is also moving that direction as well, trying to pinch off all the soldiers in this area, and will effectively help them take over probably something like 200 to 300 kilometers extra if they were able to gain control of this area. And I'm sure they want to push back up here to the same river and try to same river here, excuse me, and try to stop the Russians from getting access to this land corridor here. So they've got multiple objectives they need to achieve here, which is split the Glishkovki district in two, cut off these soldiers over here that are fighting against the Ukrainians on the Western Front in this area, and then also cut off this land corridor access that will force the Russians to only use their pontoon bridges that are constructed in the same river over these towns here of Glishkovo, Zvano, and Kuriz. Okay, so major objectives for Ukraine to try to work towards taking advantage of this district, see if they can take control over it. So let's move towards our next update. This is from Nexta. Ukrainian military. AFU captured Kadyrov's troops in the Kursk sector, and the army advanced up to 5 kilometers. Okay, so this is some big news. Looks like Ukraine had captured some of the Chechen forces that are operating inside of the Kursk sector. Now, we don't know how many that Ukraine had captured, but we've got reports here that they have advanced up to 5 kilometers. Okay, so maybe we'll get some maps on reporting at some point that show exactly where Ukraine was able to push forward, where did they gain territory at, and where did they capture these troops. So that's some big news. Maybe if I get that information, I'll show you guys later. Also from PS01, in the Kursk region, the local security forces attacked retreating conscripts and a unit of the FSB, which is Russia's security service, mistaking them for Ukrainian armed forces. The number of losses is unknown, but the number is several dozen. Illustrated photo. So this photo is actually an older picture of some Russian forces that were surrendering to Ukraine during the beginning of this offensive when Ukraine pushed into the Kursk region. But yeah, so what we've got some reports here that that Russian conscripts that were trying to retreat were attacked by their own troops. So it looks like we had some sort of friendly fire incident, but we don't know exactly how many Russian troops were attacked or potentially killed here in this exchange of fire. But this is multiple times we've seen this. We just reported not too long ago. It was up near the Kursk highway, further closer to like Elgov, which is a major city close to the Kurchatov nuclear power plant. And we had a report as well of some local citizens that were firing on Russian troops, thinking these were Ukrainians that were crossing the highway over there. So we've definitely seen multiple friendly fire incidents over here in the Kursk region of Russia. So let's move on to our next update here from Kyiv Independent. Russia's rapid offensive in Kursk Oblast hasn't yet achieved serious success, Zelensky says. In the Kursk direction, the Russians have started their rapid offensive, and they want to use about 60,000 to 70,000 people there, Zelensky said. That's a pretty good-sized fighting force right there. And yeah, according to Zelensky, he's coming out and saying that Russia's offensive in the Kursk region is, for the most part, it hasn't achieved serious success, okay? And we've kind of seen that. I did report to you guys just the other day that when Russia launched their counteroffensive in the Kursk region, they did gain some territory. I think they got something like 8 or 10 settlements taken away from Ukraine. And then also they gained somewhere around 150 square kilometers of territory that was previously claimed by Ukrainians. So it did appear to be somewhat of a success, but according to Volodymyr Zelensky, not a wide success. And this has probably taken something like 10 or 15% of the territory away from Ukraine. But now Ukraine's opening up this new offensive and essentially regaining lost territory. So we'll see how that goes. Also, now we're going to move on from Bliskovka. The air defense forces of Ukraine have destroyed 72 out of 76 Russian attack drones launched at Ukraine. 2 enemy drones were locally lost on the territory of Ukraine, and 2 more returned to Russia. Okay, so we had at least 76 drones, again, fired at Ukraine last night. I also heard some reports that Russian drones were flying into Belarusian airspace again. This time, I don't think they shot them down, as these drones passed through their territory for approximately like 30 minutes or an hour or something like that, and then ended up flying into Ukraine. So we once again had Russian drones flying into Belarusian airspace while these attacks were taking place. So also from next, this is what the Iranian attack drone Shahid carrying 40 kilograms of explosive looks like against the backdrop of the Ukrainian military. So I wanted to show you guys this. Look at how massive these drones are, okay? So whenever I'm telling you guys that 76 drones are flying into Ukrainian territory, these are the drones that are flying in, okay? So like, look at that. It's almost the size of a car, it looks like. These things are constantly entering Ukrainian airspace almost every day. And I saw a report yesterday that I wanted to share with you guys that there was something like 8,000 of these Iranian-made Shahid drones that have flown into Ukrainian territory since the start of the war. Can you imagine that? 8,000 of these that you see right here flying into Ukrainian territory from Russia. And at the same time, just like a week or so ago, Iran was congratulating Ukraine on their Independence Day and all that, or not a week ago, probably like more like 2 weeks ago. But they were coming out and saying, congratulations on your independence and everything, while at the same time they're sending all these car-sized drones over to Russia, and Russia is lobbing these into Ukraine and destroying homes, destroying people's lives, and putting people in fear. So it's absolutely insane to see the size of these drones that are being given to Russia as they target Ukraine with these consistently almost every day. So also from Anton Gerashenko, drones were spotted over Russian Murmansk again yesterday. Olenya airfield is nearby. Russian law enforcement prohibited admins of local news to publish any information about drones in the region. However, locals continue posting videos. So the Murmansk region is way up north near Finland, okay? And we've been hearing this. This is the third report I have seen over the last probably 4 days that Ukrainian drones, potentially Ukrainian drones, we actually don't even know where these are coming from because, again, the information, it seems to be withheld. But we'll go ahead and play this video. There's not a whole lot of sound, but this appears to be another type of drone entering the Murmansk region, and Russia has a airfield over here called Olenya, and lots of their strategic bombers are located at this airfield, and we've been seeing lots of drones entering into this area. And if you notice, this drone looks much different than many of the drones that we see coming from Ukraine. Usually Ukrainian drones has like a tail on the back. This one doesn't appear to have anything. So I don't know if this is the Palinitsia drone. This drone looks much different to me, but it's really hard to tell what this is. But we've definitely been seeing lots of drones entering up into this region. And these locals here were recording this drone flying over some town up in the Murmansk direction, okay? And this is very close to like Finland's border and also Norway. I also reported to you guys that some drones potentially could have been coming from Norway as some Russian military members were speaking about this on Telegram, saying that these drones were coming from the direction of Norway. So pretty crazy to see that. I wanted to share that with you guys again as we continue to see these reports of drones entering the Murmansk region up here, okay? Really far away. It's approximately 2,000 kilometers from the border of Ukraine. So also from Tendar, Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Sursky visiting Ukrainian troops at the front. So I wanted to share this with you guys, show you some of the troops on the front line. I don't know if this is in the Kursk region. I'm thinking this is probably on the Eastern Front, most likely in Donetsk or Luhansk regions. And he's here visiting. That's him right there in the middle, visiting these troops on the front line. And yeah, we don't really get to have a whole lot of photos coming out from the front line. So I thought I would share this with you guys as Oleksandr Sursky, the commander of Ukraine's armed forces, was visiting the front line. Obviously, what have we been hearing on the Eastern Front is that Ukraine is definitely struggling to hold the Russians back, but we have been hearing of some gains as well in certain areas. So it definitely appears to be very tense over here, and maybe he's trying to bring some morale to the fighters that are currently engaged in battles on the eastern side of Ukraine. So now from Nexta, Stoltenberg says, NATO should have armed Ukraine to prevent Russian invasion. Now we provide military equipment for war, then we could have provided military equipment to prevent war, NATO Secretary General said. So this is the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, and apparently he came out and said this sometime in the last 24 hours or so, that NATO could have prevented this war by simply giving Ukraine weapons ahead of time, but they did not. But obviously it's too late, right? 2.5 years, almost 3 years into this war, And it really doesn't matter at this point whether they did give them weapons or not. But he's just coming out and saying that they should have armed Ukraine to prevent this incursion into their territory, as Russia obviously launched this offensive back in 2022. So big news coming out from Jens Stoltenberg. Also from next just in, Ukraine has provided the U.S. and Britain with a list of potential targets in Russia for strikes using Western weapons. According to Reuters, the list includes command centers, fuel and weapons depots, and troop concentration sites. Initially, Ukraine aimed to use ATACMS missiles to strike Russian airfields. However, 90% of the planes Russia uses for bombing operations are stationed at airfields beyond the range of ATACMS. This was reported by the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. He said that at a meeting just a few days ago. But this is interesting. If you notice, the list of sites that they want to go after is not the airfields, and it makes sense why they're saying here that the ATACMS, the bombers have been moved out of range of ATACMS. And I think the ATACMS probably have the deepest range out of most of these long-range weapons that are being given to Ukraine if they're fitted with the right warheads. So, apparently the U.S. and Britain has this list now of the targets that Ukraine wants to go after. But again, what we're hearing is there has been no official confirmation of Ukraine being given permission to strike inside of Russian territory as of yet. Will that come later? We'll have to see. But I do have more reports talking about that as we move forward here. Also, we've got this video footage from NOAA reports. Russians try to destroy a Dragon drone operated by the 118th Territorial Defense Brigade. That is destroying their positions. So I can't play this the sound here because it's got music, unfortunately. But I've got more video footage of these. They're being called Dragon drones, as these FPV drones, small quadcopter drones used by Ukraine, are dropping molten thermite all over forests inside of the Eastern Front. We can see all that gunfire from the Russian soldiers that are inside of here. It looks like it's coming from this direction and also from over here. And these drones are trying to burn out Russian positions, catch these forests on fire. And these things appear to be very successful, as we continue seeing a lot of times these drones are trying to be shot down as they drop the molten thermite. We can see definitely lots of gunfire from the Russian soldiers inside these forests trying to take this thing down. It's pretty crazy to see that. And Ukraine continuously uses these Dragon drones to try to burn out Russian positions in the fight against Russia. Okay, so also we're going to move on now. From next, a former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Nuland criticized Vance's plan to freeze the war in Ukraine, calling it a great gift to Putin. In her opinion, if Kiev's Western partners refuse to provide clear security and defense guarantees, Putin will just wait, rest, rearm, and come for the rest. This is essentially the same proposal that was put forward in February. It's a big gift for him, Nuland stated. Okay, so this is basically going to discuss here from J.D. Vance. He's the presidential or vice presidential candidate pick for Donald Trump. And he's basically going to say here how he believes that Donald Trump is going to end this war, what their plans are, that they're going to create basically a demilitarized zone on the eastern portion of Ukraine where the current battle lines are being drawn, and ultimately give up the area of territory that Russia has already claimed, give it over to Russia. And then also I would assume that NATO would not take Ukraine into their arms, meaning that, Ukraine would not join NATO. So just go ahead and take a look at what he has to say. He's going to explain that for us.
Ukraine wants this war to end. Europe, which by the way has underfunded this war while American taxpayers have been very generous to the Ukrainians, the Europeans want this war to end because it's jacking up their energy prices. So I think what this looks like is Trump sits down, he says to the Russians, the Ukrainians, the Europeans, you guys need to figure out what does a peaceful settlement look like? And what it probably looks like is something like the current line of demarcation between Russia and Ukraine. That becomes like a demilitarized zone. It's heavily fortified so the Russians don't invade again. Ukraine remains its independent sovereignty. Russia gets the guarantee of neutrality from Ukraine. It doesn't join NATO. It doesn't join, some of these sort of allied institutions. And I think that's ultimately what this looks like. Ukraine wants this war.
Very interesting, right? How he describes this. And the reason why I'm showing you guys this is there is a potential that Donald Trump could end up becoming president in the United States in November. If he ends up getting elected, he's already come out and said he would end this war in Ukraine. And his vice presidential pick here, J.D. Vance, is basically giving those clues and indications of how Donald Trump may end the war. And, what Ukraine may have to do. They may have to give up the territories that they've lost. They'll create this demilitarized zone so that way Russia does not attack Ukraine ever again. And then also Ukraine stays neutral and does not join NATO, potentially maybe even the EU. But it's very interesting because we've heard from so many people coming out from the United States, like Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, literally just said the other day that Ukraine will join NATO at some point. Okay, it's inevitable. Also, the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, has come out and said the same thing, that Ukraine is NATO and will become part of NATO. So, obviously Donald Trump is the wild card here, as if Kamala Harris ends up becoming president, she's very pro-Ukraine, and, she will probably continue to fund the war over here and make sure that Ukraine keeps pushing until they ultimately either win or maybe even are defeated. If they can't continue fighting, who knows? But she's obviously very supportive of Ukraine to continue this war over here. So that's big news coming out from the Trump administration if they end up getting into office. So also, next reports Bloomberg, Kremlin may step up sabotage cyber attacks against NATO if Ukraine is allowed to strike Russia with Western weapons. In addition, Russia could respond with direct or indirect attacks on U.S. forces in other regions, such as the Middle East. Okay, so this is big news because we've been talking a lot about this lately with long-range strikes inside of Russia. And what would their response be? Would it be nuclear? What would it be? And according to Bloomberg, they're saying that it would be sabotage, cyber attacks on NATO nations, and also potentially direct or indirect attacks on U.S. forces in other regions such as the Middle East. So, for example, their military bases, okay? They've already been coming under attack for months now, but we could potentially see more attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East and potentially other parts of the world. So it could definitely create a very destabilizing situation for the U.S. and also its partners if they attempt to try to strike inside of Russian territory. So that's kind of what the Kremlin is stating here, or according to Bloomberg, what they believe that the Russians are planning. So let's move on to our next update now. From Nexta, The Guardian reports U.S. and Britain have authorized Ukraine's Storm Shadow strikes against Russia, but are not ready for announcement. Western officials said the missile deployment should be part of a broader plan to end the war. Okay, so here's a picture of the Storm Shadow missile. And I thought it was interesting how it says that the missile deployment should be a part of a broader plan to end the war. So I almost wonder if what we might see is the UK potentially coming out threatening towards the end of this war, whenever we get closer to like November, when we know that Ukraine may potentially start negotiating with Russia. What if we hear that the Brits start warning Russia that if they do not agree to some sort of negotiated settlement or peace deal with Ukraine, that they will essentially allow Ukraine to start using these Storm Shadow missiles. It's something that I thought about, that maybe they might use that as leverage to push or force Russia into agreeing with some sort of negotiated settlement with Ukraine. So very interesting nonetheless, but we've got more reports to go over in regards to long-range strikes. Megatron Ron reports breaking a direct threat to the U.S. and UK. Russian Foreign Ministry says Russia is ready to make America and UK suffer for allowing deep strikes into Russian territory. Okay, this is something that Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, just recently stated. Okay, is that that Russia's ready to make America and UK suffer for allowing these deep strikes to take place inside of Russian territory. So definitely a major threat coming from Russia once again. Now I've got an update here from British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Okay, this is from The Informant. So he announced no new developments following his talks with U.S. President Joe Biden. So this just took place the other day. Keir Starmer met with Joe Biden. They supposedly talked about numerous topics, not only long-range strikes inside of Russia coming from Ukraine, but it says here he described the meetings as lengthy and productive, covering Ukraine, the Middle East, and the Pacific, but provided no details on specific decisions, especially regarding Ukraine's use of Western weapons against Russia. Both Starmer and the White House withheld information on long-range strikes, while Russian President Vladimir Putin warned NATO about the risk of allowing Ukraine to strike deep within Russian territory. So we got a 30-second clip of Keir Starmer talking to reporters about his meeting with Joe Biden just the other day. So take a look at this.
What did you decide with regard to...
Well, we had a wide-ranging discussion about strategy in Ukraine, of course, in the Middle East, and other parts of the world. This wasn't a meeting about a particular capability. That wasn't why we got our heads down today. It was to allow ourselves the space which we took, the time which we took, to have a strategic discussion so that tactical decisions can be seen within the wider strategy. And it was a really good invitation from the President. We've had a very productive, and we've come to a strong position. I'm very pleased that we've had these discussions.
What did you decide?
Okay, so obviously they were probably discussing lots of big topics right now. Obviously, one of the major topics is long-range strikes inside of Russia. Is the U.S. and the U.K. going to allow Ukraine to do that? Obviously, right now that's a no. But they were probably also discussing, what the plans are to try to end this war in Ukraine, if that is going to be the case. I'm just kind of speculating that was probably some of the things they were discussing while they were meeting. But definitely, was a major show of support for Ukraine leading up to this, that we thought Ukraine was going to be able to be given permission to strike inside of Russian territory. And there was a completely deadlock and a halt to this immediately after we heard from Russian President Vladimir Putin that the U.S. and the U.K. and its partners, NATO, would be at war with Russia if long-range missiles start flying into Russian territory, okay? So let's go ahead and move on now from BRICS News. Take a look at this. As just in, United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he supports Ukraine using long-range missiles to strike inside of Russia. So apparently, according to this information, Keir Starmer is supportive of it, but they just, again, have not given the permission. Now, I wonder if we may see permission coming from the UK at some point. Maybe it'll start with the UK, so that way the US can keep out of this. But at the same time, the UK is part of NATO. Okay, so I would assume that if Russia were to declare war on the UK, it'd be war on NATO. I would assume, right? Because obviously, if they were to attack Britain in any way, then obviously that would lead to Article 4 and then eventually Article 5 anyway. So I thought that was some interesting information coming out from BRICS News. That just came out late last night. Now also from The Guardian, Germany won't support sending long-range missiles to Ukraine. Germany has made a clear decision about what we will do and what we will not do. The decision will not change, said Olaf Scholz. So 100%, maybe even 110%, it looks to me like Germany is never going to send Taurus missiles to Ukraine for them to use to conduct long-range strikes inside of Ukraine. I'm sure Ukraine's very upset by that. They've been calling for these Taurus missiles for a very long time. But also think about what's happening inside of Germany. They're having a lot of budgeting issues. Maybe they don't have too many of these missiles. Who knows? And maybe they don't even have the money to continue producing more of these if they start giving them over to Ukraine. So maybe there's several reasons economically as well why Germany does not want to hand these over. But that was something big that Olaf Scholz said in the last 24 hours, that for sure this decision will not change. They will never send these Taurus missiles over to Ukraine. But you never know. We could see flip-flops happening any day now, and all of a sudden they could send them. But according to him, that's what he said. JNK reports Sweden and Finland respond to Putin's threats by confirming that Ukraine has no limitations in using their weapons on Russian territory, in such contrast to Biden's Sullivan cowardice. Hundreds of years dealing with Russians makes it an easy choice. Okay, so this was big news. Sweden and Finland coming out and saying that they do not have any restrictions on any of their weapons given to Ukraine, and they can use them wherever they want to, even inside of Russian territory. Okay, so definitely seems to be a divided topic among NATO nations. Some nations are okay with it, some are not. Okay, so also from Military News UA, Poland is considering the possibility of transferring additional MiG-29 fighters to Ukraine. This was stated by Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs Radosław Sikorski at a press conference with his Ukrainian counterpart Andriy Sybiha. We are considering the possibility of providing additional batches of equipment, including possibly MiG-29 aircraft, which are needed today to protect Polish skies, said the head of the Polish Foreign Ministry. So I did hear that they wanted to supposedly replace some of their MiG-29s, I think with F-16s or something like that. So this will probably take weeks or months for anything to happen in regards to this. But obviously, if Ukraine were to be able to get some of these MiG-29s, it would be very easy for them to utilize these. as they're very familiar with the MiG fighter jets. So that was some big news coming from Poland recently. Also, from Sprinter family, Italian foreign minister, Ukraine is not allowed to use our weapons against Russian territory. Okay, so Italy coming out too and saying, no, you cannot use any of our weapons against Russian territory. Okay, so again, seems to be a very divided topic in regards to long-range strikes on Russia. A couple more reports to go over. We'll get you guys out of here. The Kyiv Independent. U.S. aims to improve Ukraine's strategic position in war before Biden's term ends, Wall Street Journal reports. U.S. President Joe Biden's administration aims to improve Ukraine's strategic position on the front line as much as possible before his presidential term expires this January. Wall Street Journal reported on September 12th, citing an undisclosed senior U.S. official. Okay, so obviously they want to have, good talking points for the Ukraine war, as Kamala Harris is potentially going to win the presidency in the United States. If she does win, they want to make this war look good for Kamala Harris, obviously, also prior to people voting, so that way they could vote for her, obviously. And then also, we're seeing that second front opening up in the Kursk region, so that's probably another part of this as well. And then also on the Eastern Front, what are they going to do to stabilize that? I think they obviously need to try to hold on to Pokrovsk, that major key town on the Eastern Front, as that would look really bad on Ukraine if they were to potentially lose the entire Donetsk region. So I'm sure that's also why Oleksandr Syrsky is visiting the front line, most likely inside of the Donetsk region, as that appears to be where the heavy fighting is taking place. So clearly the Biden administration is definitely trying to make sure that Ukraine is in a good position before he leaves office, okay? So that was some huge news. Megatron Ron reports breaking. Russia's accused the U.S. of supplying Ukraine with chemical weapons. Russia's representative to the UN, more than 400 cases of chemical weapons used by Ukraine have been recorded. We are waiting for an explanation from the U.S. on how Ukrainian saboteurs came into possession of a type of chemical weapon produced only in the U.S. Okay, so the Russian representative to the UN coming out and accusing Ukraine of having chemical weapons supplied by the U.S. Okay, so that's interesting that we're hearing this. And I want to try to follow this and see if I can get some more information. And if we do, I will definitely do an update video on this, because that's obviously some major news coming out if that happens to be true. So you let me know if you think he's telling the truth down below, if Ukraine is using chemical weapons, because that's obviously a very bad thing if Ukraine is. It would not look good on them. So let's go ahead and move on to our next update now. Also from Nexta, in the Russian city of Belgorod, there are explosions. Reports of explosions. A car went up in flames as a result of shelling on the Shebekino-Belgorod highway. According to local authorities, 4 people were injured. So we've got this 6-second clip that shows some cars on fire here. So it appears to be major shelling inside the Belgorod region of Russia. Take a look. Okay, so we can see from this video there definitely appears to be a car on fire, and over here in the distance, some smoke just off the side of the highway too. So I'm not sure exactly what was struck here, but appears to be major shelling on this highway. I wouldn't think that there's any Russian equipment or any buildings, like military buildings nearby here. I wouldn't think it'd be so close to a civilian highway, but who knows exactly what was targeted. But this video was coming out widely on X today, showing a massive strike here in the Belgorod region. So finally, one last thing to show you here. This literally just came out probably an hour or so at the time that I record this. And we've got this report from Nexta just in. A major strike against Russian-occupied Luhansk. Details have not yet been released. We got a couple videos to go over here also. Major strike inside of Luhansk. I'm assuming this is Ukraine carrying out this attack. And maybe this was around the same time that we saw that heavy shelling in the Belgorod region, because it would not be too far away from the Luhansk direction, depending on where these attacks took place. So let's take a look at these real quick. Okay, so it looks like a massive attack here. Lots of smoke. I don't know exactly what was hit. Is this some sort of oil refinery over here or something? I have no idea. I mean, this appears to be white smoke. Usually it's black, I guess, right? But definitely a major hit. We got another video to show you here as well. I think there's 3 in total. Okay, so no sound in this video, but definitely something burning here. I cannot tell exactly what it is, but lots of white smoke here, and it looks to be very close to a highway also. So yeah, this is very crazy to see this. Oh, there's fire there breaking out also. Yeah, I don't know if these were buildings or what was being hit here, but it appears to be also close to another highway here in the Luhansk region. I think one more video to take a look at. Let's take a look at that as well. All right, so we'll wait for official confirmation because this was literally just coming out in the last hour or two on X at the time that I record this on today's date, September 14, 2024. So yeah, maybe we'll get some news that some sort of major military installation here, maybe another depot, maybe another ammo depot was hit, who knows? But it appears to be a major strike. So yeah, guys, definitely a longer video today. I appreciate you hanging out here with me while we went over all these updates. But thank you so much for tuning in. I hope y'all have a great day today, guys. Everybody take care, and God bless. We'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this update, please smash that like button, and also hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. So thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. I hope y'all have a great day. Everybody take care, and God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.